Have you felt nervous, frustrated, because you're not quite fluent when you're reciting the Quran? Or maybe sometimes when you open the Quran, you feel like you're not pronouncing the words as it was meant to be recited. Or you don't have that flow or rhythm of Quranic recitation. In this video, inshallah ta'ala, I will share with you some steps that will help you achieve the accurate of Quranic recitation and to have that confidence. So you're going to be more confident when you're going to recite the Quran, inshallah. And if you stick around until the end of the video, I will share with you a bonus step that can make your Quranic recitation to the next level. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Abu Haythami Idris. I graduated from Al-Azhar University and I spent almost 18 years living in Egypt. I have hundreds of students that I taught how to read the Quran and memorize it. Some of them are actually leaders in their communities, some of them are actually and hufad, meaning they teach others how to memorize the Quran, and some others are competing overseas. So all of them, they started just like you, like they want to improve their Quran recitation, and now they're able to connect it deeply with the Quran with the right techniques and methods. So with that being said, let's dive into the steps so we can start this journey inshallah ta'ala as soon as possible. So the first step is mastering the basics of Quranic recitation. People get confused between knowing how to read Arabic and knowing how to recite the Quran, which is, for some reason, it is true, but not fully true. What do I mean by knowing how to read Arabic and knowing how to read the Quran? It doesn't mean if you know how to read Arabic, you're going to be able to recite the Quran as it was meant to be recited. Why? Because the script of the Quran is different than reading in other Arabic book. So you have to focus on the foundations of how to recite the Quran. For example, and the word and Malik Yawmiddin. If you open the Quran, some of the scripts you're gonna see Malik, Mim, Lam, Kaf, and there's a little alif on top of the Mim. So if you don't know how to read Arabic, or at least you know how to read Arabic, but you never took any Quranic script and basics, you're gonna read it Malik Yawmiddin. You're gonna think that little alif, it's just the fatha on top of the Mim, which is wrong. It's Malik Yawmiddin, right? So knowing those little details of how to read the Quran is very crucial. As any skill, you're going to be bad at it at the beginning, but through practice and continue practicing, you get better with it. The second step is choosing the right role model reciter. When it comes to reciting the Quran, I put all the reciters in two buckets. The first bucket is reciters that are good at reading the Quran with beautiful voice, right? Like who enjoy the voice when they are reciting the Quran. And the second bucket are reciters that are good at learning from, like how to recite the Quran. Like when they recite the Quran, they give every letter what it deserves, right? So as a person who's learning how to read the Quran, you should have both reciters. A reciter that enjoy his voice, and the other reciter is a person that you learn from how to recite the Quran. So these two reciters, it should be part of your journey of learning the Quran. The third step is listening actively and often. So after you pick a reciter that you're going to learn from how to recite the Quran, and if you ask who are the best reciters, in my opinion, the best reciter that you should listen to while you're learning how to recite the Quran is Mahmud Khalil al-Husari. Like I think so, he's the best. He's the ultimate best person, or the best and a person that you can listen to his recitation. Then afterwards, the other Egyptian reciters like Minshawi, he's very good. Hassan al-Banna, all the old reciters, they're good. Okay, so after you pick one of those reciters, what do? You open the Quran and you start listening what he's reading. Okay, you're listening, not reading. You're listening. So, for example, he will say, وقال فرعون ذروني أقتل موسى وليدع ربه. So your goal is to listen and to pick up and to understand his rhythm, how he connects words together and where he pauses. Okay, so that's the goal. So you spend time, at least 10 minutes. Like if you spend 10 minutes daily, I will promise you within 1 month, you'll be able to mimic that reciter. The fourth step is practicing reciting alongside the reciter. So after you pick a reciter that you're going to learn from, then you start listening to him actively. Right now, you're going to recite alongside with him. So what are you going to do? So let's use the same example that we did in the previous step, which is when he says, وَقَالَ فِرْعَوْنُ ذَرُونِي أَقْتُلْ مُوسَى وَلْيَدَعُ رَبَّهُ. Your goal is to listen to that wherever that he paused at, to listen to multiple times until you're able to actually read with him. Like you'll be able to match his tone and his pace. Okay, so at the beginning, start with each pause that he does. If you're able to do 2 pauses, perfect. If you're able to do 1 ayah, better. Don't start with big chunk. Start with a small chunk at the beginning until you're able to mimic exactly his tonality and his pace. The 5th step is recording yourself. So after you pick a reciter, you start listening to him actively and often. Then you start reading with him, or you start reading alongside with him. Now you're gonna start recording yourself. Okay, and this step can be eye-opening. Why? Because you will have the insights on the areas that you need to start improving on. Right? So for example, when he says وَقَالَ فِرْعَوْنُ ذَرُونِي, and if you record something like وَخَالَ فِرْعَوْنُ دَرُونِي, you're gonna be like, oh, he said وَقَالَ, not وَخَالَ. And over here he said ذَرُونِي, not دَرُونِي. Right? You're gonna be able to pick up this little mistakes that probably you don't notice by yourself. So this part or this step is very, very important, so don't skip it. Step 6 is integrating Tajweed rules gradually. You're not gonna start applying all the rules once. You're gonna start with one rule first until you master it, then you go to the next rule. Tajweed has a lot of rules, right? It's a science. You start one by one. If you try to apply all the rules once, it'll be difficult. So for example, let's use the same example. وَقَالَ فِرْعَوْنُ. So the qaf over here is not, he didn't say, or the reciter didn't say وَقَالَ. He said وَقَى. So you're gonna be like, why this qaf over here is heavy compared to أَقْتُلْ Musa? Like a little bit, if you go a little bit longer, أَقْتُلْ Musa. There's another qaf, but this one has an echo. So this one is qalqala and this one is mufakham. You're like, oh, so this is a rule. Okay, let's master this rule first. So how would you know, or how could you master this rule? Until you're able to identify by yourself. Step 7 is learning how to control your breath. When we are reciting the Quran, our breath plays a big role how we recite the Quran. So for example, and if you're reading Surah Al-Fatiha and you lost your breath on the last word, غير مغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين, you're not gonna be able to continue to finish the word itself. So if you're asking what is the best exercise of and practicing how to breathe, is each time that you pause, take a deep breath from your nose, not from your mouth, your nose. Why? Because the quality of taking breath from your nose is more better than from your mouth. Okay? So you're gonna ask another question, well, how do I know where to pause at? That was one of the steps that I mentioned, which was mimicking exactly how does the reciter reads the Quran, where he pauses, right? So right now you understand the game. So you have to learn where he stops, right? Or you have to learn al-waqf al-ibtida, that's one of the chapters inside of Tajweed rules. Or you're gonna learn where to stop and where to continue from. When you know where to stop, that's your best time to take a deep breath. Step 8 is adapt and personalize your own style. After you gain confidence of reciting the Quran, now is the time that you start adapting your own personalized style of recitation. But make sure to keep the core principles of Tajweed still there. You're still forced to read with Tajweed. Reading the Quran is a personal journey. It's not something that everybody has to be the same. Aim for progress, not for perfection. Okay? Your goal is to be better every time that you read the Quran. And this is the last step, which is the bonus step that I promised you at the beginning of the video that I will share with you at the end. In my opinion, this is one of the most important steps, and the reason that I made it a bonus is very, very important. And this step is the main reason that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran, which is understanding it. I call it mindful recitation. You have to connect with the Quran deeply more than just learning how to read it. You have to know that each time that you pick up the Quran, you start reading it, that you're not just reading any other words, you're reading Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words. Each time that before you pick up the Quran and you tell yourself, okay, I'm reading the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I will be rewarded for each letter that I read, you're gonna have more motivation to read the Quran. And I want you to remember, or I want you to think about that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to you directly each time that I read the Quran, right? And back in the days, the Salaf al-Salih, they used to say, if you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to talk to you, read His Quran, right? So take at least 1 minute to understand one verse from the Quran. Every day, 1 minute, not more than that, right? So each time that you read the Quran, remember that you're reading the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather you are a complete beginner or someone who's looking to take his Quranic recitation to the next level and understanding the Quran, then this is your chance. Imagine struggling not being able to recite the Quran to be able to recite the Quran with confidence, as the Prophet ﷺ did. Like, that's just mind blowing. Each time that I teach a student from not being able to read Arabic or the Quran to be able to recite the Quran by themselves, I just feel this fulfillment, wallahi, that I cannot describe. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. The best upon you guys, he's talking to his nation. The best upon you guys are those who learn the Quran and teaches it. Which is, the first part is you, you're learning the Quran. And the next part is me. I'm the one who's teaching you, inshallah ta'ala. So all my students, when they join Zad Institute, they start from the beginning. At least most of them, right? But they learn. To see how you can achieve similar results within a few months, I want you to click the first link inside the description so you can learn more about Zad Institute. So if you like the video, I want you to give it like, thumbs up, as they say. Like it. And if you have any questions, I want you to leave those questions inside of the comment section. Inshallah ta'ala, I will see you in the next video.